Today's Movie Lovers Unite podcast episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. We decided to partner up with BetterHelp because we know that therapy can help save lives, as well as help mental health, and BetterHelp will help you find the right therapist for you without waiting in a doctor's office. But what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help. Or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships or at work, not dealing with the stress. Whatever you need, it's time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles and start feeling better, because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in-person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, or even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you do. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. Join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself because you are your greatest asset. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp and Movie Lovers Unite. Listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/www.betterhelp.com/movie lovers unite. That's betterhelp.com/movie lovers unite and get your 10% off today. And hello, movie lovers, and welcome to the show. For today's podcast episode, I actually have Christopher with me again. So hello to everyone.
Hello.
And we're actually going to be reviewing One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, starring Jack Nicholson. This movie came out in 1975, and I figured, since this is the month of mental health and everything, what better way to do this on One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. This is actually my first time seeing the film. I never saw the film at all. I remember my grandmother actually giving my mom the VHS tape for her to go ahead and check out. And so I never got around to actually seeing it until yesterday, to be honest with you. So what did you think about the movie whenever it first came out?
Well, what'd you think when you watched it?
I actually liked it, to be honest with you. I ended up liking it. I felt like Jack Nicholson was there mostly to help rather than to be checked in. Yes, he's a criminal and stuff like that, and yes, he wanted to get away from everything. But at the same time, though, I felt like he was actually helping some of the patients, even though Nurse Ratched was actually one of the main people that wasn't really helping them. They were basically in group therapy sessions and everything else. It was just like a same repetitive theme over and over again without getting through to some of the patients and everything. And it seemed like you needed someone like Jack Nicholson's character just to start the fire and to be able to help these people and everything too, because I felt like even with Sheaf and everything too, I felt like he gave him a purpose and things like that too. And I really liked Sheaf's character. Was my favorite character of them all, to be honest with you. Don't get me wrong, I liked Bobby and everything else though too, but it just seems like that character stood out to me for who he is and everything. And plus, if you stay quiet long enough, if you start you know what I'm saying, if people think that you're crazy, they're going to think that you're crazy. So that's basically the analogy that Sheaf pretty much gave them and everything too. So I definitely loved Sheaf's character. He was actually the smartest one out of the bunch and everything when you looked at it. But I also like Christopher Reeve's character. That I thought his character was very good.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I love this movie. I'm a huge Milos Forman fan anyway, the guy who directed it. And I read the book when I was a kid before I saw the movie. And it's interesting because the book presents things in a different light. If like you're saying, Nicholson's character, right, McMurphy is
right,
kind of like almost like an anti-hero kind of, right, and he's in there for statutory rape, right, with an older girl, still a girl, and it's not a cool thing. But if you go to the book, they really hint that he was there because he raped a 9-year-old girl. And it really kind of takes the it changes the character, right?
Yeah.
You're not quite as fond of him
Right.
as you are in the movie. And it's interesting.
Right.
It's narrated by Chief. So it's actually McMurphy's character is almost secondary to Chief's in the book. It's
True.
a great book. Everybody should check it out. But the movie is fantastic. Not least of all because of all of the people who got their start in it, right?
Right.
Christopher Lloyd, Danny DeVito, Brad Dourif.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
It is really amazing because here's the thing. I didn't know Brad Dourif was even in this until I looked at the IMDb afterwards. And I'm like, it just goes to show you how many years have passed, and then all of a sudden he becomes this horror icon and everything too, with Child's Play and stuff like that. Not only that, but this is also won Jack Nicholson the Academy Award and everything too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because Brad Dourif, Christopher Lloyd, and Danny DeVito, and Dourif has the bigger part. The other two have kind of minor roles, but all three of them are playing character. Like they all kind of became these actors where we kind of had an idea of what their character was and what we would expect from a role from them. And in this movie, it's completely different. Right. I mean, they're not playing Danny DeVito's not playing his usual character you would expect. Neither is Christopher Lloyd, and Brad Dourif certainly isn't. Right.
No, definitely not. But yeah, I found his to be, like I said, I found Chief's character very interesting and stuff like that too. I had a feeling that he was one of those guys that knew what was going on, but was pretending just to be mental, just so that he can fool everybody, basically.
Right. No, it's a great scene, isn't it? Where McMurphy offers him that stick of gum, and he's like, not talking the whole movie, and then thank you. And Jack Nicholson will look on his face, and Chief is just looking down in his lap like it's nothing. He hasn't just blown his cover, and McMurphy's just sitting there, just flabbergasted. So it's a really neat scene.
It definitely
The Simpsons.
is.
Go ahead, man.
Yeah, and then he also gives him another piece of gum because he's actually shocked because he's not sure if he heard what he heard. So he gives him a second piece. He goes, "Juicy fruit."
Juicy fruit. The Simpsons did a great riff on this where Homer offers the chief, or somebody who's supposed to be a chief in this mental institution, something, and the chief's like, "Thank you," and all the orderlies like, "Oh my god, he's talking." He's like, "I just need someone to reach out to me."
Exactly. And then also too, I want to also talk about during the interview whenever when McMurphy first gets into the office and everything, and the guy's like, "Well, you don't seem like you're mental or anything like that. You don't seem like you have any." He goes, "Why do they send you here?" He goes, "Because I figured this would be a great way for me to finish off my sentence instead of me being in the prison."
Right. Yeah. I think, and then it winds up being quite a shock to him when he realizes that, he doesn't have to do the hard time for that, whatever it was, 60 days, 68 days. He doesn't have to do that hard time, but then finds out he doesn't have a release date anymore, right? It's totally up to Ratched on when he's free, and the doctors. So it kind of, I think, comes to, he was trying to screw around, right, just to beat the system, and then suddenly finds out that the system really beat him.
Exactly. And he was just trying to basically just have a cakewalk of a time, because he's like, well, there's a difference between doing 15 to 20 in prison, but there's a difference over here. Over here, whenever they tell you that you can get out, you can get out. And then they also find out that people are actually voluntary, and people that are voluntary can get out anytime that they want. And that's really another shock to him.
It's an amazing scene, right? When he suddenly and I think it's one of his most honest times, McMurphy's, where he suddenly realizes all these people are like him, and maybe one or two other people are the only ones actually committed, and everybody else is there voluntary. And I love when he's looking at Billy Babbitt and going, "Man, you're just a kid. Why are you here?" Right. And it's a very honest scene. I think Nicholson pulls it off.
He definitely does. And Billy is actually one of my other favorite characters, though, too. because you know he does have some childish tantrums. Yes, he has some delusional stuff, and then only that, but he's also trying to commit suicide and everything else, though,
Mhm.
too. You know.
Yeah. I think the really interesting thing that Foreman did with Billy's character is, you know, he stutters, has this horrible stutter through the whole movie, and then of course he winds up in bed with this one of McMurphy's girlfriends, and when he comes out, when he gets discovered by Ratchet and she's talking to him, it's hard to notice because it's only a few words, but he doesn't stutter, right? His stutter is completely gone. And then when she says, "I'm going to tell your mom," I'm going to tell your mom, and he freaks out, then his stutter kicks back in. It's almost like McMurphy found the way to fix him, right? Found the way to make him
Right.
deal with some of that stuff. And then the system came right back in and destroyed him again. So it's really interesting.
It definitely is interesting because Ratchet's supposed to be there to help them, and instead she just antagonizes them to the point where they feel like they can't overcome whatever they're trying to overcome. To be honest
Right.
with you, and then here comes McMurphy, who basically helps him get laid and everything, and he winds up having no stuttering problems. He has a little bit of a backbone, and then all of a sudden, Cratchit comes in there and
Yeah.
just tears into him. And next thing you know, he's stuttering, winds up coming back, like you said. And
Yeah.
you know, I just feel for him, though. I feel for this
Yeah.
kid, and especially whenever he said the reason why he wanted to kill himself in the first place was because the person he proposed to said no to him,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then he winds up falling for Jack Nicholson's girl and everything in this, though, too, which who he winds up sleeping with. But you know, I thought that was an interesting take. And then also, too, I liked how he was trying to get Chief to play basketball. He goes, "Throw your hands up. As a tall
Oh,
motherfucker
right.
like you and everything, you should
Right.
be able to go on ahead and play basketball." And he's like, "Hold your hands up." So, um, but
It's
yeah,
it's it's funny watching that at your second time, right? Because by then you already know that Chief he's pretty much faking, you know, being deaf and dumb.
right,
And
right.
so when you go back and watch this, and I've watched it so many times, but when you go back and watch it the next time, you're watching him do this, and you see Chief kind of starting to react, and your feelings totally different, right?
Right.
Like the first time you see that, you're like, wow, he's really responding. You know, McMurphy's really reaching him. But you see it the second time, you're like, oh my God, he's so playing everybody, right? Because now you know where he is. And so it's interesting that it's definitely one of those movies where the second time around, you're able to start picking things up, right? You know, things
Definitely.
that make
No,
more sense.
mhm. I'm just agreeing with you. Go on ahead.
Yeah, that's all I was saying.
Okay, but also too, another thing though that I want to mention is some of the other people that's have been here. Like you have Max Taber, that's and Jeff's Selfid and Bruce Frenningson, the farmer of who gives his medicine to the later. But also too, we also have, like I mentioned, Martini is in this too,
Mhm.
who's a delusional and innocent, basically because this is an innocent person, pretty much, and repressed homosexual Dale Harding's in this movie too. That's
Right.
actually another character that's in this mental institution as well. And then, of course, Billigand and Profane Max Taber
Hmm.
as well. But still, the characters in this movie feels very relatable and stuff like that too. And for it to be in 1970s and everything else, I feel like this movie's also a little bit of ahead of its time because look at everything now with homosexuality and stuff like that, and then they introduced it into this film in the 1970s, which is a risky move back then, which I
Right.
really have to admire about that for them to be able to put that in there.
Yeah. Well, you know, they had the shot. What's his name? Kirk Douglas was the first
Hmm.
guy to actually. They did a play of this, and so Kirk Douglas played McMurphy in the play, and he loved the show, and so he bought the rights, the film rights to it, and he shopped it from studio to studio to studio, and nobody wanted to buy it. And eventually, he sold the rights to his kid, Michael Douglas, and then eventually he found somebody a studio that would do it. But yeah, I mean, to your point, nobody did want to do it. They just people were avoiding it until someone said, "Okay, we'll take a chance."
Exactly. And also, too, another thing that I wanted to get to as well is Ratched sees McMurphy as a lively, rebellious presence and a threat to her authority.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to laugh at how he starts off with the gambling with the cigarettes and everything. And then
Right.
Martini's like, hit me. He goes, motherfucker, look, you have 20. Hit me.
This is not, as you can see, he's starting to lose it with all these people, right?
Right.
This
exactly.
is not, these are not 2 nickels.
He's like, look, right. Then, go on ahead, man. Go on.
I was going to say, talking about the conflict between McMurphy and Ratched. It's she's really interesting. When she starts, she's just very condescending to everybody, right? And you can even see like the orderlies and the nurses when they come in, just kind of how they respond to her, right? So she's obviously very condescending to them too. But then when they're in that room, that scene where all the doctors and there's kind of a board going on, they're deciding whether or not McMurphy needs to be sent back to prison or not. And everybody wants to send him back. And she turns around and says, I feel like we'll be just pushing our problems somewhere else. I think we should keep. And I feel like when you see the look on her face at that point, it switched from her just being condescending like she is to all of the other patients to wanting to break him, right? And at the same time, we already know he's trying to break her. So it's an interesting struggle as to who's gonna. And of course, it's him, right? He breaks first. She might get upset. He wins makes a couple of small wins, but she wins at the end, in the end where it counts. Yeah, absolutely.
And took away his spirit, though, too, which is why the outcome at the end of the film, we'll get to that in a few. But, another thing, though, too, I like how he wants to watch the World Series, and he's over there breaking her balls and everything about watching the World Series. He's like, come on, the vote is 8. And she goes, well, you need 9. Well, he goes, okay, if I get somebody else and everything, we can watch the World Series, right? Because, yeah. Because she said, well, there's only 8 people in this group. You would have to get a vote of all the people that's in here. So he goes on ahead and tries to get everybody to vote. And so he goes, you see, we got one. We got one. And she goes, I'm sorry, but it's over with now. He goes, no, it isn't.
It's over. Right. No, I love the next scene where he's talking with the doctor, and the doctor says, you don't really care for her, do you? And he's like, no. And he's like, why? And she likes a rigged game, and he's absolutely pegged her right there. She knew, she ended it in time that he wasn't going to get that person, and again, it was just another step to try to break him. But he wins that one, right? When they start pretending that there's actually a game going, which is just an amazing scene. I mean, it's so cool. Like, you see the spirits of all these other guys, and it seems like even Nicholson at that point almost believes they're really watching the game. They all get caught up in it, and it's a very bleak film. And so that's one of those scenes that's actually kind of not bleak, that's actually encouraging and positive, and kind of breaks up all the fog on either side.
Right, exactly. And then
it's
also
not a date movie. Not a movie you're taking your first date to, right?
Definitely not. I know one thing, that would be awkward as anything, just to take someone on a date to go see this movie for the very first time. I'm like, hey, do you want to see a guy who's actually going into a mental institution on statutory rape and trying to get over the system? She's like, let's see, I got an appointment with the doctor.
I gotta go.
Yep.
Yeah.
But another thing, though, too, is the part with the water fountain makes me laugh, though. Whenever he goes, I'm going to take this fucking thing and I'm going to jump it off throw it out the window.
Right.
And, of course, he's trying to pick up on it, and everybody's just watching him and looking at him and everything. Right. Of course, he never does. And, of course, everybody's spending their cigarettes at that point, spending their money at that point, though, too.
Right. Yeah, and it's really interesting because a bunch of them jump in. I think Christopher Lloyd starts first, right? Throw money in because none of
Yeah.
them think he can do it. But as he's really trying to do it, you can almost see in their faces, like, is he going to make it? You know, is he gonna actually pull it up? And of course he doesn't. But then it makes the end scene so much more powerful, right? And very
Right.
symbolic.
Definitely. And also too, I want to go into the whole thing where he breaks everybody out and everything to go to the Pacific Ocean to go and fish
Right.
and everything too. I thought that was really cool because he gets Chief to lift him up over the rail and everything, over the
Right.
fence, and then he goes into the bus, and then next thing you know, he winds up sliding down to where nobody could see him, and then after that, once everybody's in and everything, that's when he goes and takes them on this road trip
Yeah.
to the
Yeah.
Pacific Ocean. And for me, seeing that, it makes me think of, okay, there's more to this, more to the world than what's inside those four walls. You guys have to
Yeah.
experience life outside these walls,
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
what I got out of it.
It's a fun scene, right? It's another scene that's not bleak, and you actually get to see these guys almost people for that you don't see very often, right? Usually they're portrayed as their disease, right? And they're being nuts, and they're acting like what you would expect, stereotypical, the old idea of mental institutions and stuff. But in that scene, they're just, especially when he catches a fish, and all of a sudden everybody forgets everything, and they're trying to catch it, and they're yelling, and they're all excited. It's just really a neat scene to see. It's also interesting that it's the first time you kind of get a glimpse that maybe Chief isn't as dumb as he appears, right, or unaware as he appears. When Nicholson hops over, right, he just gives that slight smile, which I thought was cool.
Yeah, that little smirk of a smile is definitely
Hmm.
something that I really liked about it, though. Too, he's like, okay,
Yeah.
he really got away. He's really slick at it, just like.
Right. Right.
But I also liked how how McMurphy promises him, hey, it's going to be you and I breaking out of here soon. You and I are going to be the ones who go out and
Right.
everything.
Right.
We're going to leave all this
Yeah.
shit behind, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, and he means it, right? He's not
Hmm.
he's not screwing around with them. He really they form that relationship, which is kind of, it's like Chief gets through to McMurphy as well, right? And that's kind of cool. I'm interested. So, I saw this movie, gosh, in early '80s because I'm old, and so
Hmm.
I saw it a long time ago, and I've watched it. I can't even say how many times, but I always get the same feeling because I saw it way, way back then. So now you're seeing it fresh yesterday. How does it hold up, do you think, to today's standards?
To be honest with you, I think it's a little outdated a little bit, but it still
Hmm.
serves a purpose to me. There are a lot of things that are done differently today whenever you look at psychiatry and stuff like that. During that time, it was the story actually takes place in 1963.
Hmm.
So, those kind of experiments and stuff like that, they might do a little bit of those experiments, but I feel like some of those experiments are more harmful than some, and then they probably don't even do them that much anymore
Right.
compared
Right.
to now. But I do feel like some of it might be a little dated and everything. But still,
Mhm.
I feel like the whole entire plot line in itself stands out on its own merit without having
Right.
to introduce us into cell phones and all that other stuff and make it more
Right.
updated. So I feel like it actually grabs your attention right away.
Right. I feel like a lot of people, when it came out, right, which, what, 71, 72, I
So
don't know, sometime
75.
70s, 75. Oh, that
Yep.
way. Anyway, so I think, for a lot of people, it was probably at the time, probably a real revelation that some of the things that might be going on in these institutions, right, of abuse and not helping them and your patients. And I would imagine when you watch it now, I mean, we've actually seen and gone through these investigations, right? Of found these homes that were taken advantage or abusing or just not caring for their patients, and it's gotten fixed. So I wonder if it's really, and it's still, I mean, just an amazing film. But I wonder if it's um, as I don't know about believable, but just as eye-opening as it was, that, you know, it was, I think, just eye-raising.
I feel like that is still as powerful as it is today, especially when we look, because don't forget, back in 1963, people weren't really knowing anything, how to cure certain things or anything like that. They were just going with experimentations and hoping that something would come out of it. Today, we have medicine and stuff like that that's more aware of other people's behaviors and stuff like that and wanting to help people versus this way, because we actually know what we're dealing with in a sense. But at the same time, we do still probably go through some experimental stuff with just taking the medications and stuff. But as far as the physicality of going through electric therapy and stuff like that, I don't think that it's that extreme as it once was. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I think a lot of that now has been, we're aware of it now, right? Whereas we might not have been back then. And I don't know. I actually meant to look this up and I didn't get a chance to do it. But I'm curious if it happened to work the same way like maybe Serpico did, right? Where it kind of brought up all this movie brought up all this real-time corruption that was going on in the police department in New York. And I wonder if this was similar in that not only was it kind of referring to these things that can happen, but if it actually turned up things where people suddenly started becoming more aware and started to really look into them. I wonder, like, which came first, right? Which is chicken, which is the egg?
Right. And then also, too, with this, there's also another thing that I want to bring up is the fact that after their whole entire deal with going out to fish and everything else, that's when they get punished with electric shock therapy at the shock shop. And that's when, of course, we get that great scene with Chief and Jack McMurphy, where he actually hands Chief the gum, and then that's when he realizes that he can talk. And then next thing you know, they do the electric shock therapy on him. And then after that, then I have to laugh at McMurphy, who returns to the ward pretending to be brain damaged from it.
Right. But it's real foreshadowing, isn't it? If you look at him, the way he walks in there, and then of course what happens at the end, I think it's real big foreshadowing for what's coming.
Most definitely, because I didn't think about the foreshadowing until like after the fact, after everything's all said and done. But yes, very big eye opener for the foreshadowing of what happens towards the end of the film. Then also too, I have to laugh at the whole Christmas party thing where McMurphy winds up throwing a Christmas party, and of course, one of the orderlies that's in this movie actually plays in The Shining. Plays the caretaker in The Shining.
Scatman Crothers, man, yes. I love that guy.
He has such a cool vibe to him, though.
He was awesome.
I like him as an actor. He had this cool sway about him whenever he's acting and everything. He had this cool vibe with him.
He was a very cool guy.
But then at the Christmas party, he ends up sneaking Rose and, of course,
Candy.
Rose and Candy into the psych ward and everything with bottles of alcohol. And of course, he does wind up paying the orderly off.
And sex is kind of how it seemed like.
Would be like the last place.
I guess she took one for the team there.
She definitely did, because remember, Billy goes, I want to date with I want to date with Candy, and he says, when? Because you said you don't want to escape with Chief and I. He goes, whenever.
Right.
It's so innocent, though. He's just such an innocent there's an innocence to him that I really like about him.
Yeah, and it's interesting because McMurphy, who's basically a cynic and really is very self-involved, you take it from everything you hear about him and a lot of what he says, but McMurphy gets caught because he wants to give this thing to Billy, right? And it almost seems like he's doing it out of some sort of goodness of his heart, right?
Right.
And so it's just interesting to see a little bit of humanity come out of him, and it's his downfall.
Yeah, it's definitely his downfall because number one, he winds up falling asleep and everything, doesn't escape with Chief at all, and then he winds up waking up, and that's when Reverend Ratched comes in, and of course, we already saw that she threatens Billy after he stands up to her, and then he has a stutter in him back, and then that's also the repercussions of him actually killing himself.
Yeah.
And that's when Jack Nicholson goes on ahead, McMurphy, he goes on ahead and just strangles her.
Yeah, he snaps.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
Because basically at that point, I felt like at that point and everything, it was like, okay, it's because of you is the reason why we have someone dead now. It's not because of the fact I brought alcohol into this
Right.
place. It's because of the fact that you treated your patients like crap.
Right.
And you also undermined them into who they are and got rid
Yeah.
of it representation of who they are to the point where they don't think that they can actually cope with everyday life.
Yeah, and it's interesting. He misses his second time to escape because of Billy, right? Because he's still got the keys that he's gotten from Scatman, and they've already closed the window, and so he's trying to get the right key to unlock it. And the other orderly sees him and tries to stop him. They're going to fight, but then the nurse screams, at we haven't seen it yet, but at Billy's suicide, and that guy runs off. And at that point, the window's open, and McMurphy could have hopped out and taken off, but of course he doesn't. Instead, he goes to look in on Billy, and then that's really where he snaps. But it's interesting. Billy kind of stopped him twice from getting out of there.
Right. And then I have to laugh how they throw Kenny and Rose out and everything, and Kenny and Rose are waiting outside the window, waiting for McMurphy to come out.
Right.
And then, of course, he winds up coming back because, number one, Chief is not behind him either. So that would be like him breaking a promise to the Chief.
Right.
And everything, too. So basically, he had Billy to blame, but he also didn't want to leave Chief behind either. So it was like a two for right there. And then, of course, after everything is said and done, she winds up pretty much cutting off passages to his brain, McMurphy's brain. And everything.
Yeah, well, she lobotomizes him.
Yep, I couldn't think of the word.
So,
right.
That was a nice replacement, though. Cut out parts. That place was great. That was a good cover. Nobody knew. Nobody could tell. You got it.
Right. Well, this is why I'm not a doctor. This is why I review them.
But yeah, she lobotomizes him, and wow, what a shock, right?
She took away his
I
spirit.
cry every time I see that scene. I don't want to be a wimp, but I do. Well, everybody who actually knows me knows I cry at every movie ever. But yeah, man, that scene, no matter how many times I see it, just gets me because it's really like a full emotion that you're seeing from Chief at that point. He's really opened up at that part, right? And he's like, I feel as big as a goddamn mountain, and it's just, and then he realizes what they did to him, and he does the right thing, right? I mean, nobody wants to see McMurphy like that, and he's right. No. He says, you wouldn't want to be like this, and I won't leave you like this.
Exactly.
Man, it's a powerful scene.
That is one powerful scene, to be honest with you. I felt like, okay, well, she took away your spirit, and he's going to be a vegetable and everything. And someone that's so lively like McMurphy, it's hard to see somebody like that. Because he built friendships with these people. He actually felt part of the community and everything within that whole entire place, But, then of course, this is also the part that we were talking about when Chief winds up lifting the water fountain and everything. And he just goes on ahead, lifts it up, water's pouring all over the place, and then just throws it out the window. And then he escapes and runs out. And then, of course, that's whenever it winds up closing out.
Right. Yeah, and again, the difference between this and the book. So this, I think, was a pretty, as much as it could, it was a pretty happy ending, right? I mean, it was really positive in that he's beaten this, and now he's going on to live for him and McMurphy, and he's gaining his freedom. In the book, they earlier in the novel, they kind of Casey makes some comparisons to to animals, to roadkill and stuff in this one section of the road, and that is where that's where Chief is running out to, right? And you just get that feeling in the book. It gives you more of a feeling like it's just hopeless, right? That he's not going anywhere. It doesn't feel happy. Almost the same exact scene, but it doesn't feel happy. It doesn't feel like Chief is winning anything. So it's interesting in the movie. I think they try to make it seem that way, right? Kind of an uplifting end for Chief, anyway.
Right. It's like, well, I'm going to go on ahead and carry on the spirit of McMurphy. I'm going to go on ahead and do what he was planning on doing for me. With me escaping, it's like he's with me wherever I go.
Right. Yeah. Will Sampson, awesome actor. Right.
I really
Died as part of the poltergeist curse.
Oh yeah, I remember that whole entire poltergeist curse thing.
Yeah. He was taken down in that thing, man.
But yeah, this movie is fantastic. I recommend anybody who hasn't seen it, check it out. Like I said, it might be a little dated in certain areas, but it still will grab your attention. It will still make you tear up as well. And also too is the characters are very relatable and stuff like that as well. So I had a lot of fun watching this film for the very first time and just enjoying it for what it is.
Yeah, I think this is one of those films that everybody should try to see, right? Just because it's one of those classic movies and it's beautifully made and it has these amazing character actors in it, and you get to see them kind of at the beginning of their talents, right? Even Nicholson hadn't done too much at that point. And man, it's just wow! It's just a great movie to see, right? It's if you don't see it, I wouldn't consider you an American, not at all.
Most definitely. So
yeah, that's not right.
So is there anything else that you wanted to add to the movie, or is there anything else that you wanted to mention?
Well, so you know me, trivia, right? A lot of useless knowledge in my head. So came up with some interesting trivia. So apparently, there are only 3 movies that ever won. What is it? Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Directing, and just like this whole slew of them. There's only 3. Of course, Cuckoo's Nest is one. It Happened One Night is the second one. I never saw that. I think is that about the Titanic? Maybe.
I don't know. I haven't seen that one.
I don't remember. It's an older one. But then Silence of the Lambs is the other one. So
that's
it's
another one.
Yeah. So it's just interesting trivia to me.
Okay. So with that being said, guys, that's going to be it for the show. My question is this: where can people follow you at if they want to follow you?
So CT Minori on Twitter. You can find me Christopher Minori on Facebook, and whoever wants to friend me can. And my website is minorjoystudios.com. And my books and audiobooks are available up on Amazon. It's easiest if you just do a search for my name. In fact, yesterday my latest book, Stealing Destiny, just came out on audiobook. So
nice,
good stuff. Yeah, definitely go check those out. They're good.
And speaking of Audible, you guys can go on ahead and sign up at the link below to get a free 30-day trial. So go on ahead and download Chris's book and everything too.
Yeah, I make and that's awesome because I usually tell people that because I make like an extra bonus from Audible if people their first choice is my stuff. So
okay,
it's definitely worth it. Kind of funny.
All right. So with that being said, guys, that's it for the show. I do appreciate Christopher. I appreciate you coming on the show, man.
It's a blast.
Great. And
thank you.
You're very welcome. And of course, guys, if you guys want to donate to the page, how do you do that? Just go on ahead to go to www.gofundme.com/Movie Lovers Podcast. And then, of course, if you want to go on ahead, get an audio only podcast episode wherever you guys get your podcast from, just go on ahead, check out Movie Lovers Unite, wherever you can go and get your podcast. And then, of course, for all your entertainment news and pleasures and everything else, just go to www.movieloversunite.com. Then, of course, you guys can go on ahead and follow me on Instagram at Movie Lovers TV Lovers Unite over there, and on Facebook underneath the same name. And then, of course, on Pinterest underneath the same name as well. You guys can also go on ahead and follow me under Movie Lovers Unit on Stereo and also on Twitter as well. If you've got a sponsor or anything like that, go on ahead, email me at movieloversunite@gmail.com. And those are all the places that you can reach me at. And always until next time, guys, it's been real. It's been fun. Can't wait to do this again. And bye-bye.
Cheers.